If I can, I was worried about actually connecting with the students because I do understand that like when you have that face to face, it's the small moments in which you can connect with them that are crucial. And these past 2 days, I got that small moment when defense and prosecution needed help, and I had to like go between each one, pretending to be a person, so they can get practice, and then just kind of communicating with them where their head's at, and cracking small jokes here and there. But it helped me understand like how each of them thinks and how everything rolls. And my main thing, my whole thing with this online camp was, I was down for it. I was like in online in face. Either way, I was happy to do it. But I was worried that there was going to be certain barriers that couldn't be passed. But that quickly died once everyone got comfortable with being, online.
Cool. Nice feedback, Nadia.
What would you get rid of?
Zoom altogether. No online, face to face. Corona.
Yeah.
Within our control. How's that? Let's narrow it in.
The first thing that I thought of when you asked that is the logic core. Simply because with everything else being so focused on story, the sudden shift from the story matters, the story you're telling matters, to the facts matter, but they are philosophical. So do they really? But yes, that was a really odd shift, I felt.
That's a good call. And maybe, Dr. King is taking his sabbatical this year. So maybe we can bring somebody in that can help shift that whole philosophy piece. Good call. Anybody else?
Maya and Nadia really liked that piece. Maya, for you had critical thinking games. And I don't know why we couldn't bring in, Brandon, a 2-hour critical thinking game like to catch a killer, where you're having to be logical about and have a strategy with it. So, Brandon, I really think you might want to gamify that section.
Yeah, I think we can do that, but also show like how it's an advanced skill to be able to tell a story and impeach a witness at the same time.
Yeah, you did a nice job coaching the new pieces into the end. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that's where Peyton's landing is. Like there was too much of a like divide between story and the actual doing that piece, and I think we can improve that.
But you saying that makes me think, because I see the importance of like the piece that Dr. King had, but what if we did it earlier in the camp before we even start talking about all the story stuff, so it doesn't contradict? It's like, okay, the facts are important, like the thought, the logic and stuff, that's important, and then but the story is what gets you.
So teaching them how to intertwine the facts with their story.
And again, I think you should use gamification.
Yeah, still, for sure.
You need Brandon, you actually need to have them play. And if we had you just read a summary of G's book, Brandon, about where's the title of it? And Cynthia, this is Cynthia's thing too, Brandon. This is another strength of hers. What video games have to teach us about learning and literacy. Cynthia loves that. So between Peyton's skill and Nadia's skill of building and Maya's of playing and knowing how to crack games, you've got a perfect foursome for designing a game that will work for what we're looking for. So we could take elements from To Catch a Killer or one of the other games, Maya, that you like and say, here's these games. Nadia, Peyton, and Cynthia, how do we create something about critical thinking so that they're engaged in doing it, and then we take them out to show that there's a story and there's logic?
I don't think we have to reinvent anything. I think if we use Hunt a Killer, one of those boxes, and scan like Zoom and everything else, that'll be perfect, because one, it's like investigative, so it kind of fits with the whole law theme. It's like earlier.
All right, so don't give up my game yet. I mean, we have it scanned, but don't give up the game yet. Keep the box. Do you want me to? We were going to give the box. So should we keep the box?
I'm trying to I like the one with the snake.
The green box, the original one we did, not the game, not the one with the QR codes.
Right. Well, I mean, that would work too. I just wasn't a big fan of how it ended. It didn't make enough sense.
No, we'll do so Brandon, Maya played To Hunt a Killer, and so the company came out several years ago, and they finally did. It was so well done that a son sent it to his mother, and she called the police because she thought she had actually been sent a murder kit, like about a real murder. That's how well the story had been put together. And so this company is a great company, and other knockoffs have come, but basically the story was from the 70s, 80s, in a marriage. And so what we do is we break them in teams, we give everything, but even though they're working in team, we can either have them work in a team, which would be team development, and we would take all of us to help walk them through. So we as a team would do it together, so that we know how to play it. And then we would divide out to work with the teams in helping direct them so that they could get the game done. So it would be a really good team building exercise is what we're saying in addition to it, Brandon. So we could teach them and do team building with it. And then if we do it early, like everyone's suggesting, we go back to the game throughout the camp, Brandon, of the story. Remember the story of To Hunt a Killer. Remember how it was developed. Remember how you had to go through and look at all of the facts.
Yeah, I think it'll be storytelling and critical thinking, everything.
Another game type, at least, that could be really, really helpful is something similar to Coup or the Resistance. Because one, it's a really fun game for everybody to play. Two, an integral part of it is lying and figuring out if somebody is lying. So those were things that we really ran into that I saw is also your ability to just flip, because you can pretend to be every single character in that game. The ability, you just can't get caught. So with they got stuck on their scripts, like their pre-written scripts.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that. That irritates me beyond measure. I'm just so sick of reading scripts, and we're gonna work on that earlier next year.
Brandon, one of the things that G says is you let them master their script and take it away. So they go into automaticity and then you take it from them.
Well, that's what we do in mock trial. It's hard to do on Zoom.
Yeah.
Because I'll pull you off the team.
Switch sides. Make process.
Yeah. That's what I would. That's why I like changing the roles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Patrick said he has something to say, y'all, in case y'all didn't.
Yeah, I want to hear from Patrick, and I want to hear what would you add. What's something you'd add to the camp? But Patrick.
All right. Hello. So are y'all planning on doing the same topic next year?
Mm-hmm.
I think this theme will always be on the Scottsboro Boys. This 11th and 12th grade will always be Scottsboro Boys.
Okay. Well, because I think that but y'all are gonna have another one for like the 9th and 10th.
Law and Money, yes.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, I think that this is a really important topic, but I think that we also need to reinforce the idea that the system back whenever this case first went to court was prejudiced, and it was far from perfect, but that they turned around in the Supreme Court case and got it right. And because we want to send the students who go back to their schools that the system is a lot better than what it has been in the past, and it's continuing to improve. Because we want more good attorneys, and we want to encourage these students to have faith in the system that the United States has created, because we want law-abiding citizens, and we don't want anarchy or any of that. So I think that if y'all do this again, I think that we should also just like reinforce that. Because I know like some of the students like were just, I mean, not that they were blatantly, but they kind of were like, yeah, the system is corrupt, and they were kind of saying that. But that's my opinion on the
So
subject.
let me ask you this. I mean, what I saw at the start of the week, two things in response to that, and I need you guys to help me figure out how to make sure that we are reinforcing this message in the camp. I think we could improve this. But let me tell you what I saw. I saw Crystalline come into this camp thinking that courts only had white people that were prejudiced in them. And she said, this is a quote, "I thought everybody in the court system was prejudiced." And then by the time the camp's over, she's saying, well, there's some people in the court who want to just do the right thing. And so I feel like that we're actually communicating that message in that way. The big point for me, I mean, that was a little gem right there, because for me, the big point is we give them the opportunity to reimagine justice. They don't have to do a mock trial. And the fact that, and there was some talk in the teams when they were having to decide what they were going to do. Like some people said, well, we need to take this battle to newspapers. We need to take this battle, to these other places other than courts. And I'm very attuned to that discussion because what they're doing is either they're giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down to where courts are today in society. And it's encouraging to me that the students come back and say, we want a trial. Because that affirms, in my mind anyway, it affirms that they in fact still have belief in the judicial system. And that's the point of the camp. There was nothing wrong with the judicial system when this happened. The problem was in the people. That's the role of society. I mean, that's the whole point. Anybody at the time who was on that jury, 1 of 12 could have just said, guys, I know we've been going to church together our whole lives. I know we're in the Rotary Club together. I know we play golf together on weekends. But I can't go along with you on this one. And there was a way to do that just by saying, as a juror, I haven't heard enough evidence. I don't have enough evidence. And so how do we make that point clearer in the camp? That at the beginning of the camp, they don't have to do a mock trial. In fact, there was a team who said, let's go to grand jury. Let's put together a grand jury because the indictment should have never issued here. Again, though, there's nothing wrong with the grand jury process. If I was on that grand jury, I'd be like, grand juries have subpoena power. I want to hear from some more people. And I have the power to do that. So how do we get that message across? I do think Patrick has a point that we weren't clear. Like Sruthi messaged me several times about, why didn't you tell us this was a mock trial earlier? And so what that tells me is that we didn't communicate to her very clearly that she didn't have to have a mock trial.
I think one thing is,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one thing might be between the facilitators and just everybody, I think they may have heard trial a couple times or something. Like, I think I may have mentioned it once or twice on accident or in passing. And I think that may influence them one way or another. So if we didn't talk about it at all, that might be more helpful in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I think that might be helpful, and I'd love your input on this, is when I was practicing, if a client came to me, in my mind, I would always be thinking, how do we get this out of the court system? How do I solve this for my client without getting them in the court system? Because I don't want my client in the court system because then we lose control of the outcome. I want my client out of the court system so that we can take control back of the situation. So maybe by bringing in lawyers earlier in the week to talk about how we navigate injustices without going to court. Yeah.
Well, another, this is an idea. I mean, y'all take it for what it's worth, but in the past 2 years, which actually I think that this year, the mock trial was a lot better, and both the defense and prosecution were extremely, I was like, dang, those boys raped that girl for a minute. And I was like, what? But, I mean, I think that it was like I said, they did a lot better this year with the convincing, but I think it might be beneficial to possibly look at a trial that's not as popular. I mean, I know that it's not super popular, but because I mean, like just about every time the outcome is going to be that the boys are going to be innocent. So I think it might be good to, like, for the evidence base and testimony, that it might be good to go with a less known case. I mean, I don't know what do y'all, because so that way that it could possibly go both ways.
I see what you're saying. But I do think like the important piece of it is that they're reimagining it for the justice. So like the whole piece is for the boys to have gotten justice in a way sooner than they did. But I do see the value in having a case that is a little on the fence about which way to go. Because I mean, with this one, like, once all the evidence is presented, they didn't do it.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But if there was an option where it's like, did they do it? Kind of even thinking about like how the hunter killer game went or something like that, that might be a place that we could integrate that kind of mentality.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm coming from, because it's widely known that that they got it wrong the first time, and that
hold up. I mean, let me just argue with you a little bit if I can, and I mean in a very polite argument way. Victoria Price never recanted. She went. In fact, when the NBC's documentary on this case painted her in the light of a liar, and I forget exactly what else they said. She sued NBC and they paid her. She sued them for defamation and they paid her. Now that didn't come out in the camp, but like Victoria Price went to her grave saying that she was raped. Now I don't believe her, but like we could actually bring that fact out to the point where it does become more of a question.
Patrick, I kind of think like Maya said, like I get what you're saying, but I feel like doing that brings the focus more back to like the whole mock trial thing, which like as we were just talking about, like it doesn't have to be a mock trial at the end of the camp, which like I think like everyone said, like a lot of the kids did get super focused on that, and it was maybe hard for them to like stay in the premise of like it's about telling the story and like crafting the story because they got so caught up in the trial. But I think like we all tried to keep them like, let's talk about the story and go back to the story. But if it is a case where it's like it's all about like, well, which way are you going to prove it, then I feel like they wouldn't choose to do any other demonstration than a mock trial, which like this isn't really a mock trial camp. Like we don't mock trial rules and stuff.
Right. Well, what about an idea of we still have this case as the main focus, but maybe like on Wednesday or Thursday we introduce another kind of injustice or something like that, where that way that it like Professor Blankenship was saying that it could go like either way, but it's not, but it's a different case. You see what I mean? So that way that it's.
So I actually think for them to get that point, it doesn't necessarily have to be the trial that it is. So I'm thinking as I'm talking, with Hunter Killer, as Annetta was saying, like I think that might actually be an opportunity for them to kind of get more of the feeling for both sides. Yeah, Kayla, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Because with Hunter Killer, you don't know who did it. Like you're figuring that out. So that gives them the chance to kind of feel for like the full story and getting all the facts and stuff together.
Wait, what? Can you explain to me? Because I think I stepped out of the room whenever you were talking about that topic.
So it's a murder mystery game that you play. The way it works is you order a box and they send everything you need to solve the murder in that box. But it's a story. It's So the one we did was about a family who, like, somebody died years before and somebody was trying to figure out how she died and why. And so they were really searching through the evidence, finding clues, deciphering codes, everything else to figure out who in the family was responsible for her death. But there were multiple suspects. So it was about like figuring out, pinpointing the right people, and then telling the story at the end to show that you really figured the whole thing out, but you had to get like all parts of the story right. So I think that'd be a good way to integrate it. You're muted.
Yeah, sure.
So I was just
Kayla.
no, I'm sorry. No, you can go ahead. You were starting.
No. You've been waiting. Go.
No, I was just gonna say to go back off what Patrick was saying. I feel like I understand why you would say like doing another case, like when you wouldn't be able to like predict what the outcome would be, I guess. But I feel like sticking to one case, which I feel like is, for one thing, I feel like in school, these students probably get used to getting different topics. Like this teaches them how to stick with one thing, which they would have to do in the legal field. Like being an attorney, you have to take one thing and you have to find like every component, every level, and really dive deep. So I feel like that forced them to like, you had to see like deeper things, and everything like they had to really think about a lot of stuff and process it. So I feel like it's good to like the whole concepts they gain while doing it. I don't know, I just feel like it's just more meaningful than like, I don't know, trying to like switch to another case.
On the flip side of that, though, I mean, I hear you, and I'm just thinking about this as we're walking through it. Like, so the answer for me would be a more effective prosecution, right? And you could prosecute this case, but the problem is that whatever team or students decide to be on the prosecution team are facing a whole lot of cultural backlash, right? I mean, and they may not be mature enough to do that. In other words, I could prosecute this case, and it, and of course I tell my students this, like, just because I say something in this class or make some kind of argument doesn't mean that's my personal beliefs. You're not going to know my personal beliefs about most things. I could prosecute this case, and without any kind of moral conflict, but that took experience. Like it's not about what my personal beliefs are. It's about the law and the evidence. So maybe that's the challenge, is to actually, I mean, the two times I've seen it done, I think Patrick would agree, he was there. Well, everybody that was there, the prosecution to some degree lays down.
Yeah, I had a conversation, me and Nadia, earlier today, right before lunch, with the prosecution. We were kind of trying to help them a little bit. And part of that conversation was like, you're in a tough spot, but all of them were still fighting as much as they could, even though they knew what the outcome was going to be, because they still wanted to give it their all. And they still wanted to put the effort into making sure the other team put effort into winning, because they felt like in some instances, like they were the ones still working. And even we saw the defense team left like before 12 o'clock, I think, but the prosecution was working up until after 12:30, because they knew like if they're going to win, they're going to work for it.
And I will say their opening was spectacular. Patrick's right about that. Like when their opening got going, I was like, dang. Like
They were so mature. Like, I don't know. I feel like we were concerned about like, how would they take it? And, was it going to be so dark and deep for them? And then, I don't know, they just seemed like they just were like, oh, I mean, they knew it was bad and horrible, but they like handled it like so maturely. Like, I mean, I was impressed. Like, we didn't have any, like, I didn't see any like conflicts with it. But.
Okay.
I was to that point with it being dark, as the tragedy of it is we're dealing with a generation who's become socially numb to the horrors around them. I've become numb to them, as I'm no longer like, I hear something tragic and I'm just like, well, hopefully it gets some justice, and I just go on about my day. And they've become that same way. Christiane even mentioned that as well. And I think like what Patrick was saying, we don't want them to come in and be like, down with the government. But with them having that idea, these are kids who have the energy and zeal to make change. They may not be like, you don't have to agree with the government in order to want change, but I do understand that we show them that it's not, the system has some broken errors to it, and it does have some good parts to it. It's trying to be a force of change to fix it, and that's what you're trying to teach them.
And that's what I would carry back to Patrick's point of view. And that is ultimately, I see this being a leadership center that's really, designed around, around the Scottsboro Boys case. There's a tremendous amount of energy around the case. There's a tremendous amount of money. Decatur just announced a $56 million facility that's going to be built around the Scottsboro Boys case. And here's the risk of that. The risk is that we glamorize the wrong things. And that's what Patrick's saying. Patrick's saying, look, we've got to be careful. If we're not careful, then this case actually makes us want to abandon the judicial system. And I don't agree with that at all. I mean, I agree with what Patrick's saying. I'm just saying, I just don't think that's not my takeaway. Here's what I see in this case. There were courageous people who stood up. And that's what we want to say. Okay, well, how do you be a leader when you're faced with this kind of stuff? Like, I love the story of Sheriff Wan. We don't spend enough time on that.
Mm-hmm.
Sheriff Wan stood up to the entire thousands of people in that lynch mob, and they parted. When he came to them, he said they were going to take the boys out of the jail and lynch them, and he said, the first one that steps forward, I'm gonna put a bullet in their head. And then they stood there and they didn't advance, and he took his gun belt off and handed it to his deputy and walked through the crowd over to the probate's office, and the crowd parted to let him go. And when he got over there, that's when they called the governor and got the National Guard involved. Well, that is the kind of leadership that we want when we're faced with these kind of situations. And we're faced with them now. We're going to be faced with them more and more in the culture we're living in. How do we show leadership like that?
Okay, Kaylin.
Okay. Out of all this times I press this button, right? This is one of the first few times that I really meant to press it. because the reason I kept pressing it was because I was trying to go to the chat. And I was like, where is that? I said, where's that raise that hand button? I said, I really need it now. But I was listening to what everybody's saying. Mine kind of piggybacks off Patrick's, but it kind of veers off from Patrick's response. I was going to say, I got to go back to my notes because I wrote down some notes. I think I could see the reason why you used the Scott Burroughs case, but my first initial reaction was, I said, why is it such an old case? And then when you explained it to me, and I think you explained it to me before the camp,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, well, I see where this is kind of going. But my suggestion would be that if you're going to use it, I feel like you should also just include small sessions, just 2-hour sessions of just more up-to-date social justice issues. Like, and I know I keep saying Black Lives Matter. I don't want to make it just Black Lives Matters, but just other things that are going on in society too, because I think you have to make it more relevant to today's standpoint too, because yeah, we all can understand how things were last century, but when you put it into more of our generation terms, people can get it, So I think it kind of, and think about it like this, because we have to take a step back, us as facilitators and the students have to take a step back and kind of go into that culture. I mean, reach back. I think what you can do as one of the co-founders is kind of reach in and it's like, well, let's pick, and I know you can do it, Dr. Blankenship, can reach into our generation and see like what social justice issues is millennials and Generation Z kind of facing that can tie back to hit them, because I guarantee you would get so many responses and be like, okay, we're all in for this, So I'm not saying change the tribe. I'm saying just
make it more relevant.
Make it more relevant.
So to add,
go ahead.
So I completely understand where you're going with that. I think in concept, that's a great idea. In reality, we're already overloading the students. There are where it's like, all right, now we're going to shift to 2 hours to something entirely different. I'm going to retain either nothing or get very confused about my facts or what I'm supposed to be focusing on for the actual, for the rest of it.
Okay, what if Peyton, in response to that, we said, okay, thank you for coming to the pre-law camp. We'd like to invite you to this session in the Center for Restorative Leadership. And when they come into the Center for Restorative Leadership, we say, okay, now that you've experienced the Scottsboro Boys Camp, faced with, let's say that you were on the scene as a private citizen in the George Floyd incident, what would a leader do?
Like that.
Are you asking that, using that as a scenario?
Yeah, I'm using that as a modern day scenario. It happened right as we were trying to decide to do this camp. I'm really sort of posing the question to you guys. You guys just went through the Scottsboro Boys case. You just had a trial. Let's say you leave your house today because you can't stand Zoom anymore. You go out on the street, and when you walk out on the street, there's an officer that's got his knee on somebody's neck, and that you can tell that person is not resisting. They're not awake. And you're encountering the police in that environment. What does a leader do?
Oh, come on for the hard question. Oh, wow.
Which is, I'm going to then counterpoint. I think it's a great question, but when I try to think about this, I'm having difficulty, not like wrapping my, well, how do I say this? Thinking through the possibilities of what I could do. Like, so wrapping my brain around the situation is possible, but when I start thinking about it, it's more than just the difficulty of this is a difficult question. It's the difficulty of my brain is extremely fatigued already from everything I've done.
Well, yeah, I'm giving you a break. I don't want to do the camp immediately after, and maybe you're just talking about your personal experience in this moment. But I'm saying if we invited them back 2 weeks from now and we took Kaylin's point and we made it more relevant to the modern times, just by taking incidents and saying, okay, how do you use these restorative touchstones in your everyday life?
And that's kind of, and I'm gonna kind of agree with you, Dr. Blank. That's kind of the idea I was trying to go with, because I was like, what if we just took an issue like that? Not saying use that as a lesson, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, like somebody in Breonna Taylor, okay, Scottsboro case. What I'm saying is that we can have sessions and just take out the gem. Just hit on it real quick, take out the gem for that. And if it falls into a line with the Scottsboro's case, then use it. If it isn't, then hey, I ain't gonna say dump it, but you have retained information from that.
So I think with a question like that, my initial thought was, I'm a Black woman. I wouldn't do anything because that's going to be me on the ground next. And that's that. And I think we would all say like what we would want to do, but we don't think about like what the bystander effect would be in that instance. Everybody thinks they would act, but the bystander effect is real. And so many people watch because they don't know what to do. And then like with that, I think if we do want to acknowledge it, the opportunity is present with the restorative circles. So instead of asking the more abstract questions like what is justice, we can ask more targeted questions like what would justice be in this situation. That way we're bringing people to the table, inviting the community there to discuss it, and still implementing those restorative practices while also talking about something and making strides towards something that they hopefully could affect change.
So I think like kind of our collective hesitation or inability to answer Brandon's question kind of goes back to like the issue we kind of identified with the prosecution. And I saw this like when I was working with them. It's like not that they're afraid of the cultural backlash or anything, or the pseudo-cultural backlash of, having to prosecute the case. I think they just don't have the tools, like they don't know how that looks or like what to do because, and I think like getting into those kind of questions may be one way to, get them thinking in that way. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I think the problem is like, it's not that they don't want to prosecute. I don't think they know how.
Might I add?
Thank you. I was jotting that down. Go, Patrick.
I mean, I know this might, it might make some sense, but it reminds me of, I believe the movie is called Mississippi Burning. Have y'all seen that? No? Okay. Well, it's set in Mississippi during the 1960s. And I think there's a black guy who got shot by a bunch of like 3 or 4 white dudes, and they sent an FBI agent and some attorneys, I believe, to go to. I'll have to watch it again, but it's kind of similar to what the prosecution is facing, but kind of in reverse, because they were prosecuting. Well, I guess it's the defense. I don't know, but I mean, it's semi-relevant to kind of what the Scottsboro Boys. And like I said, I'll have to go rewatch it, but I think that if y'all do this again, that might be another source of just kind of relating to it with the
Well, if I can build on that, I mean, the Scottsboro Boys case is not unique. This case, this exact fact pattern is repeated in the Chicago 5, and in there's an exact case in Texas. I mean, like New York, like it's everywhere.
In the New York case with the Central Park 5.
Right. I mean, and so that might be also something we could bring out, is that you could take these exact same facts and probably get them in at least half of the states.
Well, and see, that's why I was kind of saying that it might be beneficial with, well, I mean, well, I don't know if it's be beneficial, but it might be good to kind of get a case that, like I said, nobody really knows about, and that, I mean, it could go, nobody really knows the outcome of it, that we could, if we were to do a trial, maybe, I mean, I don't know. That's just my thought on it, since there's so many, and it was common, especially around the time that this case happened.
Okay, so let's go back to the objectives of the camp. And that's the restorative touchstones and creating leadership skills in the kids. If we give them a historical case that's been tried for 7 decades, we know the results, we know everything. We can put the facts there. They're ready to boogie. Then we can focus them on the restorative touchstones and applying them. There's a couple of things that are going on in the camp. It's not about the case, it's about the process. And so what's going to be the easiest process in that instance? And so when we design this, and it's not that Brandon and I aren't open for design ideas, the idea is to go out to 8th graders and say, hey, law's an option. You don't have to go into STEM, because in Birmingham, it's STEM or nothing, essentially, right? We're a medical place, essentially, is what we are. And so what we're saying is there's really other options out there for you. And have you thought about law and the different things? Brandon and I have a very similar approach. In the nonprofit classes I teach, if you walk out of my class going, there is no way in hell I'm going to work at a nonprofit, I scored, because you're one less person that needs to go into the nonprofit world. But I say, check me out in about 20 years. Brandon feels the same way. There's a lot of stuff that goes into working in these different types of businesses and organizations. That's a different point. The other part of it is, and Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's just easier to have a historic case as a backdrop to be building on our skills. And I think that's part of the things that we want to consider in this. So anyway, 8th grade, we go and recruit them. And that's where our partnership with Marion, Michelle is at with Breakthrough, is raising 8th graders, raising 9th graders. 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade are eventually going to be their own cases as we continue to build and expand. So 11th grade will be the Scottsboro case. What we want to be able to do by 12th grade is hopefully work with YouServe, who does service learning. And with YouServe, we want to be able to take these restorative skills that we've been building since 8th grade and have them do a service learning project, implementing and acting on the restorative skills we have been trying to do in the field of law. So it may be some sort of internship. I don't know. Brandon and I don't know, because we have to work with YouServe, but we're not there yet. So that's the big picture of what Brandon and I are trying to achieve. I don't know that Brandon and I really care about the law case so much, is the ability to have strong enough evidence and a historical backing to it that we're going to be able to move forward. That's what's important about the Lily Ledbetter case, because Brandon and I are wondering if it's a historical enough and it is extensive enough to achieve what we're trying to do. And that's what's important about December and testing our curriculum in December to see if we can stick to the Lily Ledbetter case. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's the thing about the Scottsboro boy case isn't that I'm in love with the Scottsboro boys case.
I don't think any of us are.
No, it has a lot of positive things, and one of the positive things that Annette is bringing out is that from an academic point of view, we can go put our hands on the transcript. We can actually go get the exhibits. The death warrants, which we looked at last year, you know, that was impactful to the students when they saw the death warrants. You know, those things are readily available, and we can put our hands on them. Not all cases have that level of access. You know, when we started looking at Lily Ledbetter, which is an employment discrimination case, it's a case that basically says if you're a woman, you should be paid the same for the work that men do if you do the same work. And we went and started looking at that, and there's roughly over 500 pages of legal documents associated that we had to work through, but it doesn't have the same like meat as the Scottsboro boy case. Like you can't really just get a hold of like you can in this case. But to Patrick's point, you know, it could be that the case is so murky that it clouds the restorative practices work.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You know, so I mean, I'm open to hear that. I mean,
and the thing, what I heard last year after was, well, they had a great time, but I think they were thinking that it was going to be more of focused around the process and like building the case. I think we did a better job this year because like the prosecution and the defense, they both had great cases, and the testimony was good. But I think that they just wanted like to learn, I guess, deeper about like how, I think that they were thinking that it was going to be more like objections, which I mean, I know that's not all about what law's about, but kind of like learning those and like how like to, or why to file a motion to do whatever and except like just stuff like that and then they were thinking that there was going to be more like just learning about like documents, like I said, and just like how the system works rather than focusing on, I guess, like the story of the case and then the restorative. I didn't even really understand the restorative, like, or the touchstones or I didn't really even know what that was until like just a minute ago.
I think that's the beauty of the camp. Like this camp is made to be different from all the other pre-law camps. Everybody else talks about the process. They have access to that on Google, but the important stuff is the things that people don't normally talk about. It's about the story. It's about humanizing it really, and putting yourself and your emotions into it. So I think that's like one thing that we definitely need to keep because it sets us apart from everybody else. And I think by the end of the camp, they realize why. And even if it's for our sake, like doing a better job of publicizing the difference with this camp, I think now we have the opportunity to do that with the testimonies the students gave because we were recording. So it's just a matter of clipping that, because I think Sophie said it best. She was like, oh my God, no rules. And then she's like, oh, I get it. Okay, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'll say I need to do a better job of communicating to potential students that this is not about objections and motions. A trained monkey can make objections and respond to it, and that doesn't win cases.
Yeah, Brandon's teaching them how to win.
Right. I mean, story wins, and your ability to, like I call it cluck like a chicken. I mean, you can walk across the road in a straight line, or you can cluck like a chicken and dance across the road, and your ability to dance is what wins. Nothing made me happier than being in court and somebody come in with a notebook with a bunch of writing on it. I'd be like, I just won. Because I can tell you what we're not going to talk about today.
What is ever on their pad of paper,
Whatever's on that pad.
all scripted.
Right. So whatever they start talking about, that's what we're not going to talk about in this hearing. Because as soon as I get them out of that pad, I win.
Even if you think about some of like the greatest lost scenes from movies and stuff, none of them are really, it's not about the objections. It's about how they're telling the story of what they need to tell. You can't handle the truth. Like all of that it's part of the picture, painting the picture.
And let me show Patrick so that you know, I think I can communicate it, like, and speak his language a little bit. So if you go into a courtroom, you'll see a lot of lawyers who will say objection, hearsay, and they'll stop right there. That's a horrible objection. Why? It doesn't tell the story. It doesn't push your position forward. If I'm going to make a hearsay objection, it sounds like this: Your Honor, I hate to object, but the jury is entitled to hear from the actual witness, as opposed to somebody who heard the witness. Now, both of those are hearsay objections. Which one engendered me to the jury? Like, which one built trust with the jury, right? Or I might say, you know, objection, Your Honor, you know, this witness might have something to say, but the actual person who was there said something else, telling my story. If that's how I'm trying the case, and the other side's just trying to stick to objection, they're going to objection me out of the courtroom, they're going to lose every time. So that.
Well, I completely understand. Like, no, I'm on y'all's side. Like, I completely understand. I think that it would be that we should voice that better to the students.
Yes.
Whenever we're going through this process, that, like you said, motions and objectives don't win cases, that telling the story and getting both sides of the story will figure out, and the system will chew it up, and then we'll try to find the best justice, which obviously in this case, the first one justice didn't happen. But that justice and that, like, yeah, I lost my train of thought mid sentence, but yeah, you understand. So you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. By like that we should just like voice that to the students a little better.
I think there's even in this camp evidence that supports what you're saying, because I heard Shruti, for example, say, you know, support what you're saying. I heard Sophie support what you're saying. You know, that I think we need to do a better job of communicating to them that I'm not interested in the mechanics of a courtroom. You know, if you can't learn that, then you need to do something else anyway.
Well, because a good amount of these students had done mock trials before, and so they know all the other stuff. But I think that we need to, like I said, like reinforce that we're just trying to show you that the story is more important than all of the other fancy motions and etc.
You know, what's interesting, a couple of thoughts come to mind, because I automatically translate it into an activity is what I do, Patrick, when you say this. And to me, it sounds like one of our first icebreaker activities, Brandon, that will make it very clear, and we can create more of these icebreaker is, all right, we're going to break you in your teams. You have 2 minutes to say what happens in a courtroom. I want you to think about a case. What happens in a courtroom? I want you to list them out. And then, Brandon, we take them and we have them show the list, and then we say, okay, in your teams, and you give them a definition, which is story, which is mechanics, which is story, which is mechanics. And then they have to identify, and this is going to get harder, Brandon, right? Because they're not going to get what we mean by story versus mechanics yet. Most of them are going to be used to the rules and the mechanics of it. Then we say, okay, which wins a case? And we have the teams all come up with a vote, and they have to put it on the screen, assuming we're still in Zoom, so I'm going to do that. They have to put it on the screen. And it's going to be really interesting to allow you to debrief them based on their answer. And then, Brandon, you go, in this camp, here's what wins a case and where the focus for the rest of the week is going to be. And
I really like that idea. That's a very good idea.
That way we start from the get-go.
I'm just praying it's not on Zoom.
We can do it on Zoom. It will be just fine.
My butt hurts.
Stand like I stand, baby. Stand like I stand. Because I can lead this the whole time until we get to the end, and then boom, we let you deliver the final punch. You know, that's a real easy exercise that we can do, and it builds it. They start going, oh man, you've got it. Then we have Sophie going, oh my God, what do you mean? And we have Amy, whose mind's doing this. Amy was one of the most coachable people we had. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but as soon as I said, Amy, your debate mind is getting you in trouble. That is what's stopping you. She suddenly stopped, because I don't think anyone has ever told her her debate technique is getting in her way. And she did really well with that. And I think Sophie learned from that, by the way. It took her longer, but I think she learned from that.
I mean, I hope you guys picked up on that. I mean, it's always amazing to me how well the students teach each other. Mm-hmm. It's just so impressive to me.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, thank you for bringing up this discussion, because I think it's really important for those of you who are going to continue with us, and that you've bought in and you see Brandon's and my vision a little bit to bring your piece to the growing vision of this, and why we're doing what we're doing, and why we've made the selections we've made.
Yes, ma'am. I think if she's really good at debate, she should go into the legislative branch.
Well, you know, a lot do.
Like Porter.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there are a lot of students in our pre-law program that I just tell them, look, you can go to law school and you can go do that deal, but let me tell you where you're going to have a good life. You need to go, you know, work in the policy institute, or go be a lobbyist, or get into the fray itself and be a congressperson. That's where you need to be. And you know, a lot of them do that because at some point you have to choose between a macro impact and a micro impact.
Yep, absolutely.
And so once they begin to understand that, they're like, policy is really my place, or the legislature is really my place. I mean, the truth is, if you had time to develop this case, if you really wanted to develop it, the legislature of Alabama at some point, and not just Alabama, it was across the country. I mean, the most racist place in the world is not Birmingham, it's Baltimore. That's a Brandonism, but I'm just telling you, that was my experience. Alabama, there was a law in the books that said, you know, if you rape somebody, then it's a felony. If a black person rapes a white person, there's a death enhancement. Okay, that's racist right on the face of it. You know, we changed that in the legislature. A rape's a rape. And so, you know, that's certainly where you would change that. It's in the legislature.
I agree.
I think I like what you just said. That's kind of why I think I kind of go back and forth with my career choice sometimes, because I knew I wanted to be, an educator, and I'm like, but how can I incorporate policy in it? And I feel like when I was trying to explain it to people, then they said, you want to be a politician, like they just said out a lot of things to me. And then when I had talks with you guys was like, do you want to make a micro impact or a macro impact? And you guys told me to look into healthcare administration and then public administration. And I looked at it, I was like, oh, those are so far left from what I want to do, or whatever. So it still leaves me like in a question mark of array of things sometimes. So I just blurting that out since it's on my mind.
Well, and you don't have to do it all at one time, Kaylin. You know, at some point, I'm kind of trekking my way to getting a really big hat and a cigar and writing books.
Is that with or without the whiskey?
No comment.
Oh, that's right. We are recording. It's too late. I already said gin, but I'm 48. I am very legal at this point.
I just said we came in the room talking about gin and wine and
That's right. I am way legal at this point. I think everyone on this phone call except for Peyton is legal.
I'm not. I'm 20.
23, isn't he?
No.
His face.
8 years
19.
What?
I'm 19.
I thought who said they was 23?
I said I'm 20.
Okay, so 2 of you aren't legal.
Wow. Brett, how old are you?
I'm almost 25.
Oh, okay, I'm same here. I'm almost 25. And you said you 24, Maya?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I swear I heard somebody say they was 23.
I'm 23, Kaylin.
Where are you? Oh, okay, there you go. Okay. Remember, you guys, I'm on my phone.
Kaylin, we can't help you. We know where she is on our screens.
Remember, I'm on my phone, so it's different.
I will say this. I have been so impressed with how Kalen has kept up with this on his phone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Couldn't have been me.
he's not just on his phone. He is actually in the know.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That made me think cause I'm gonna tell you why, because I'm on my phone and I'm on my computer. But 2 days ago, my computer, I don't know what it did something really, really funky that I don't like. And I can't get on it right now. I don't know if it's the internet or whatever, but it did something. So I just been having to go back and forth between Teams and Zoom to kind of figure out where things are going and everything. And I try to stay on, even when I have my picture up there, I'm on the phone. I'm just not responding because I'm like, I'm battling in my mind sometimes like, Kaylin, back off. Because I think I've even got some private messages like, hey, let them do what they do. Because I know me, I'm a motivator at heart.
We know that's why we want Dawn with Vaughn.
I'm a motivator at heart. But then at questions, it's like, I can ask, but sometimes I feel that it's still on surface level. And even when I start to think deeper, my deeper is way past the deeper than what it needs to be sometimes. So
Overthinking is for sure.
Correct. Overthinking.
All right. So let me summarize a few things that I've heard for us. I've heard that we're happy with Zoom, that we actually got to a level of connecting that none of us really thought was possible, number one. Number two, Brandon, I do not hear pushback from anybody about the amount of time, nor the way we navigated breaks. Am I correct? Online.
I would say correct.
Just what you said. My thing went out.
Yeah, mine's acting unstable right now too for some reason. That's weird. It may be the time of day. I noticed that around between 5, 4, and 6, it gets cattywampus, even though it's a Saturday. So again, Brandon, I think it's excellent. We have not heard a pushback about time. Number 3, a change that Maya and I want to introduce to you that we talked about is that going forward, we need to do the Dawn with Vaughn motivation, something in the morning to kick them off with. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's, hopefully it will be Dawn with Vaughn. And then the after party, our late night talk show host. That those two things those two absolutely need to continue. What I told Maya is for the first couple of days when we do this, Kaylin, if you come back, and Patrick, as you continue with us, because we probably won't let you go either, just so you know, is that they need to be structured for just the first 2 days. I want structured activities where you're purposefully getting them to interact with you and each other. After that, let it go any way you want. Any way you want. The only reason is that we've got to warm them up a little bit. And once they're warm, I'm cool with it. So
yes. I think that's important.
What was that?
I was going to say, I think that's important, especially for the after party.
Yeah.
It's something that is structured, and even saying like, y'all do need to show up for like the first night or two. And then after that, they'll be like, ooh, what's happening tonight? Like, I want to go to it.
And if you do it immediately, Patrick, give me 1 sec. If you do it immediately as it's part of the camp, they'll automatically think, oh, I'm supposed to go to that. That's the other reason to start it Sunday night. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. That's what I kind of had the epiphany whenever we were doing the Zoom. I was like, hey, we need to, since we're not able to like hang out at the dorms out like what we did last year.
Yeah.
But I was even thinking maybe, because you know how we had like longer days at the beginning of the week?
Yep.
I mean, y'all don't have to take this, but maybe reversing that to where we have shorter days and more time to kind of connect. And like maybe on Monday we just have kind of like a midday just kind of session where we just kind of talk and kind of get our minds off of things for maybe 30 minutes and then get back into it, like right after lunch, just to kind of like get our minds back, because sometimes they, especially in the afternoon, they get kind of tired. So just kind of keep them interested in doing something like that. And I do like the idea of the first couple nights having the after party within the schedule, so that they come, because I had a difficult time getting some of them there. But I mean, Kylan and Michi were always there, and I mean, we had good
And
conversations. Yes.
Yeah, the
Oh,
costumes
yeah.
were awesome. Those were great.
But yeah, we had a good time, those who did. But I mean, I understand the others where being on Zoom for 10 hours, I could fall out whenever I log off. So I
Well, I will
understand.
say, some of them didn't come because they had homework to do, not because they were tired.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I understand that too. I mean, I got a speech and an essay to write before tomorrow night. So, but yeah, and I've been doing homework all throughout the week. So
Oh
I mean,
God, I'm so jealous. You've gotten it done.
My
Good.
CV still hasn't gotten done yet.
Patrick, thank you for the feedback on that. Brandon, what I'm thinking about lunchtime afterwards is literally a physical game, the stand up, sit down, and we can tie it back to a session.
Mm-hmm.
But literally, because they were so I was so surprised how responsive they were when we did that. When they were so dead after that lunch, and they were so willing to get up and sit down, and and again, if we have someone who isn't able-bodied, they have to do the arm motions, whatever.
Yeah, I can definitely say the stand up, sit down. With COVID, everybody wants to be active.
Yeah.
So just giving them that tiny thing of saying, all right, stop sitting, we're standing, you're sitting, you're on the floor doing push-ups, whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to take part in this because I'm so god awfully tired of sitting here.
Yeah.
And
just want to do something.
I think that's what we tried to do with the TikToks, but I guess it really didn't catch on as good as we thought that it did.
That was really interesting about that.
Yeah, I thought that they would be more apt to do it, but I guess I guess they were just exhausted and they had other things to do. So I don't really know what we could change about the TikTok thing.
Patrick,
Aya taught me a lesson.
More happy about Instagram, guys. I think we were off.
No, I don't even think it's that, because in general, I think it's just the type of student that's going to actively engage in like a pre-law camp in the middle of the summer is probably not the type of student that's always on social media. And Sawyer taught me that when he said he had a flip phone.
Well, again, Sawyer's an outlier.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I mean, even thinking about, I told Kylan he has an old soul, because he was the one, he was like, I don't care about that. He doesn't care about any of it. And
yeah.
We probably need to get him to show us his license on the camera, because he might have been 40.
Probably.
I really was shocked.
That's brilliant. But you know what it told us, and I think we made the right decision, and thank you for letting me intervene with that the way I did, Peyton and Maya, of let's just do artwork. Mm-hmm. We need to remember that for December's camp, because Elijah's really about, he says these 9th and 10th graders, let them do music, let them do prose, let them express themselves that way. I don't know that that's changed very much. And boy, do we get to see talent. I mean, Brandon, we get to see stuff that we can use for marketing. Yeah. If they'll let us use for marketing. The artwork was stunning. And that's exactly what we want at the Restorative Leadership Center. That's exactly what we want, decorating the walls and stuff.
I agree. My thing with the TikTok was TikTok isn't just skits. Like I see people doing music and everything else on there anyway. So my hope was that they would use whatever media they wanted to and still use TikTok, because that also gives them that time limit.
Yeah. So let's see if we can perfect it for the 9th and 10th graders and just put some quick cute video things to show them.
I think also part of the problem was, like, after Sophie and Amy made me aware of it, it was too hard for them to try to get the audio on TikTok. So with me putting the audio on, it made it a lot easier for them. So I think
okay, excellent. Okay, cool. All right. So so let's go back to this. We talked that the hours on a problem. We need to do the more the team building stuff with Dawn with Vaughn, after party and after lunch. We want more structure in the beginning. We want to do an exercise at the very beginning as one of our icebreakers about what happens in a courtroom, so that we're breaking it down and getting them to tell us mechanics so that we can turn around and tell them, no, this is about story. Peyton.
I still have a case of cards which is completely built, everything's done, and it's completely based around the process of a courtroom.
Oh shit, we forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need you to, yeah, we'll want to review that with you and see if we can use it for law and money, and then keep looking at that. Maya.
I just want you to know that means you ain't going nowhere, Peyton.
I'm aware.
Oh yeah, Peyton's hours as well.
I
mean, the
I've
only reason
come to
Lauren isn't going to
terms.
stick with us is because she's going to use grad school. Brandon's not going to let me use grad school as an excuse. Kayla's ours.
I'm here.
Well, maybe I can figure out a way. You know, I have a multilingual daughter. Maybe I can figure out a way to make her part of the master's work you're doing, and then I hook you back.
Speaking of the game, Peyton, you can give your opinion on this, but like, don't we need a lot more time for the game? Like we could not get that done in an hour. Like we went way over, but you could really schedule like a whole afternoon for that.
You know what? I think it should go to the after party. I think you introduce it in the camp and then we bring it to the after party.
That would be the perfect activity for like the early in the week after party that's mandatory. Like y'all gotta come have fun.
Yeah. So we introduce and we work out. Lauren, what do you think about this? We introduce it the 5:30 session. We introduce it to them, work out the bugs, get them used to doing a few rounds, and then continue it at the after party to find out who the winner is. And then what you do is the winning team, whatever that looks like, make it points.
Mm-hmm.
The team to actually show up, stick it out. You give it a reward, essentially.
A good idea.
Yeah.
One other thing I was gonna say, I agree. Like they embraced how long the camp was and like didn't complain about the hours. But for me personally, like if you're gonna put breaks on the schedule, I feel like we should take the breaks. Like, I don't know, maybe the kids really didn't care, but I also feel like if they did care, maybe they wouldn't speak up about it. I just think like when it's so long, like taking a 5-minute break sometimes is not enough when like the breaks are scheduled for longer.
Yeah, I agree, but also they did let us know when they wanted that time, because we when we were talking about the TikToks, we were like, okay, so do we shorten lunch and do it? And they were like, nah, lunch is staying the same. We're not gonna change that. They need that hour, and they let us know that.
And Lauren, part of what was going on that when you weren't around, we were gauging it because Brandon and I can push. Brandon and I will push through no matter what. We both know that about us. But I think, and give me feedback, I think I gauged it pretty well when we were in sessions. Can anyone give me feedback when it looked like they were burnt and we needed to give them time? How did I do?
I think after.
Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was saying like probably after lunch, I feel like everybody started to get kind of like tired because like, you know, you're full. And I feel like that's always, I mean, it takes a minute for you to get back up, but I feel like doing those activities will take care of it. So
yeah, it is always the worst. That is after lunch, no matter what field you're in, no matter what you do, after lunch sucks. I was a public speaker for years. Yeah.
Going back to Lauren's point, Lauren, so there are some parts of the camp are like fixed, what I would call anchored. And so would you feel like that it would be?
Sorry, can you just say that again? The whole thing cut out for me.
Sure. So part of the camp is anchored. Like, so for example, no recording during circles. You know, that's not negotiable, you know, like don't do it. And so do we need to create breaks like that? Do we need to say we're having 15-minute breaks? The break might move in the schedule. Like we may run over, but once you get to the break, you get hard 15 minutes.
Well, I understand like people, like we gauged what they wanted. So I don't want to speak like for the students. Like I think it's a good idea to ask them like if they need more time or if they want it. I don't know. Also, if it was in person, it would be different. I just think with it on Zoom and like so much screen time, like it is important to take a longer break. But that's just my opinion. So like if they say they don't want it, you know, that's their choice.
So we'll be more conscious of that. And I think we definitely do a couple of things where I got very directive. Turn on. Oh, Peyton.
Well, no, you can go. Mine, it's something someone mentioned sparked an idea, but finish your thought first.
Okay, so we'll just do more directives in some of our mini breaks. Off with the screen, get up and walk out of your room. I don't care if you pee, I don't care if you get a snack, but turn off your screen right now. We all need a break and be back.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we'll be more, Brandon, we just need to write down, be more directive with our break. Especially when they're burnt.
But where do we land on the fixed? Because originally what Lauren said was that, you know, the 15 morphed into 5. And where do we land on that?
So I think part of that was, you guys, you're awesome, but there are times where you let things just go off the schedule beyond the point. Like, I completely understand things that go off the schedule. That's fine. Like, you're learning, you're gaining something from it. That's great. There are a couple times where it just kind of just kept going, and that length is what forced us to have to shorten in order to conform to another part of the schedule. So like once I started having to, like, more along the lines, keeping you guys much more on track of the schedule, the breaks got to a bit more of a set time frame where it's like, all right, we got the break. Maybe it's like 11.
I think a fix to that is just identifying what are those anchor points and where you do have flexibility. So like,
I also like, Brett, that once you define those anchor points, that we have a countdown in that chat. You know, to me, so the reason I kept bringing that up, and I think we need to make it a fixture, is when it's us, it's perfectly acceptable for Peyton to jump in and overspeak us and say, hey, you're over time. But when we have a presenter, you know, you don't know how that's going to be received. And they've taken, you know, they could be somewhere billing $500 an hour, and they took time out of their day to come over here and help us. You know, we want to be very respectful of that, you know, their position.
I think the solution to that is even building the buffers into the session. So on the schedule, it says a session is from 1:30 to 3. Then we tell the presenter they have an hour and 15 minutes. So that gives you 15 more minutes to work.
Correct.
With. Like an hour to present, 15 minutes for Q&A, and still 15 minutes of wiggle room.
And that's what I told Brandon. Brandon, did you do that with them? Because that's one of the things we had discussed.
Sorry to cut you off, Professor Blankenship, but whenever I facilitated, I believe it was Dr. Lewis, maybe it was Shelby. Before I said, I'm gonna like send you a message whenever it's about like 10 minutes, and then that means to start kind of like getting only like a couple more questions and wrapping up. Just so I think that it's good to establish before the presenter, like just to do a direct message, if we do it over Zoom, just to establish like, hey, we're supposed to end at 10 a.m. I'll send you something around like 9:50 just to kind of wrap up and do another question or two. What do y'all think about that? I mean, what was that? I mean, I know it was a younger person, but for an older person, that would be received well, do you think?
Yeah, I think anything that we tell them up front, you know, if we say it and then we do it, we're good.
Yeah, it's managing expectations is what it's called, Patrick. That was a fabulous example of managing expectations.
Yeah, I mean, it's even, I think, more mindful about that because to Peyton's point, that helps the presenter corral themselves.
Mm-hmm. So then he only has to master our schedules, hence schedule master.
I think also using that in conjunction with Maya's like 15-minute padding, I think that would be the perfect formula.
So another point that also dealing with time, but in a different way that I saw. So the rhetorical circles, I think it might actually be more beneficial to cut down the number of them, but increase the length of the remaining ones. Because we would consistently go through one round in an hour, or maybe 1.5. If we made it longer, if we're in the big group, now I mean, when we're in the small groups, it goes pretty quickly. But if we want to do the big groups where everyone's ideas are still heard, I think increasing the length of those, you might lose students because you sit there a lot, but you're going to be able to get through more.
Peyton, I'm going to ask you a question, and this is open to the group. It's just that Peyton brought it up. Peyton, do you feel there is a need beyond the introduction to a restorative circle in the big group to ever do them in a big group again?
No.
Now this is open to everybody. So once we do the main restorative circle as a model, can we continue the rest of them in small teams?
I think, or go ahead, Maya, if you were going.
I think there's still some beauty in having the conversation as a larger group, because the smaller the group, the fewer like opposing opinions you're having. And so
Right.
Cutting it down every time, like you lose. If I'm in a group with only a set number of people, I'm never going to hear what Kylan says unless I just happen to randomly get grouped with Kylan. But I still do like agree that some smaller ones are important, because then everybody does get a chance to say everything they want to say.
Well, you get to go 3 rounds. Remember, the process is to go 3 rounds. In the large group, there's no way we can go 3 rounds.
Right.
If we get 21, 30 students, there's no way.
No.
I mean, it's going to take us 2 hours to get through 30 students, guys. Because
well, but if we have 21 to 30 students, and I think that's the opportunity to use larger, smaller groups. So rather than it being 4 people, it could be like 10.
Well, feedback for Cynthia would be, with the size of camp we had, we could have split it in half.
Yeah.
And gotten through at 2 to 3 rounds possibly.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the smaller. Peyton, go ahead.
No, I believe first Patrick had a thing before I go again.
So I have a few things on that. At first, I didn't really take it seriously, and then at first, then whenever she called on me and I felt embarrassed because I really wasn't paying attention, I listened the next time and I actually enjoyed it and got something out of it. Now, I think that it would be good to ask better questions, because I think Brett and I were in the same one, and it was the justice questions, and I think that they were kind of asking the same thing, or at least we were all saying the same answers, or at least mostly. So I think that it would be good to have like kind of different, possibly like different questions that are like almost completely different, but have some similar, something similar. And but whenever we like come back at the end to the bigger group, I think it would be good to call, like if we had 3 groups and we had 3 questions, call on each group to say like what they had to say about this question. And then we ask everybody, does anybody have anything opposing or anything that like differs that, just so we get like maybe 1 or 2 people to have opposing. Is that not realistic?
No, Patrick, the purpose of the circle, and this is very important for all of us to always keep in mind, it is a totally different experience than you will experience in anything. People get to have a safe environment, and that's why the rules are the way the rules are, to state where they're at, to state their truth. It isn't a dialogue. It isn't a discussion. It is a space that we all hold that is sacred, so that we can express ourselves to the level that we're comfortable with and know that no one will respond back. And that's what made it hard for Lauren, and made it challenging for Brett, and made it challenging for Cynthia and me, when suddenly Cynthia had turned it over to me and I had to do it. It was like, okay, wait a minute. How did Cynthia and Lauren do this? How did Brett do this? Wait a minute. They said, okay, I can't say anything. Rephrase what they said. Thank you for sharing, and move on. It isn't a place where you ask questions, you find opposing views, because as Maya pointed out, the larger they are, the more you're going to hear different views.
But wouldn't it be good to listen and see like what somebody else has to say, not like in a debate, but just where they come from? And I mean, not like I said, like not to get into a debate, but just to like kind of hear what everybody else says. I mean, it doesn't matter really what they say, but just that there are also other views on that. Because if you don't, then you like, I mean, if you don't have somebody that's opposing you, then that's all that you're going to have. I mean, it's also good, like personally, for somebody to, and I mean, not debate, but like for somebody to say, hey, I have a different view than that. And then you can like look at why they think that.
Okay.
I think that happened though.
Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, there might be a better way to go about it.
Let me answer that because I'm cooking on it. So what we're trying to do in the restorative circle is we're actually trying to create a safe place so that everybody can be heard, right? And if a restorative circle is done properly, when we get out of the restorative circle, it will have inspired what you just said. After we leave the circle, then people choose who they want to have this dialogue with based on that experience. So like, for example, they decide who's safe, who's not safe.
There you go.
You know, not who's in agreement with me. You know, because after, you know, I've done a lot of these in law circles and attorney circles, and what will happen is you have two people who diabolically disagree, but they're safe. And so I can go up to somebody and say, hey, you know, I heard you say this, and I just couldn't disagree more, and enter into a really healthy dialogue about that, and both sides just go at it. But you walk away, you know, because it was a safe dialogue, you walk away as friends, which is hard to do in the culture we live in. And the second point I want to make is that you have Patrick, now I'm talking to Patrick, you have a natural knack for doing what's called a connecting circle. And that's that first circle that we do. So if you went to any of the after party stuff, you see Patrick doing just naturally, didn't even know what he was doing. Like, I mean, yeah, you know what you're doing, but you didn't know it was restorative. Like when those people first come on, you create a safe place for them, and you make sure that you ask them these questions. You know, like, what's your favorite this? What's your, like you're just, like you're actually engaging them just socially, but then you affirm them. Like, you know, so if they say the wackiest answer, you're just like, oh, okay, that's good. And then you move on to the next thing, right? Well, that's what you're doing in that, that after party naturally. What you're not doing is, and it's not the place to do it, right? I mean, the after party might be the place where you actually have the dialogue. So let's say during the day we have the restorative circles. That gets stuff cooking. It lets me know who's safe. It lets me know like kind of where everybody is. And then I come in the after party, I can have a conversation, you know, a dialogue.
Wait, but I thought that the restorative circles were more dialogues and not discussions.
They're not dialogue. They're not a dialogue. They're a safe place for us to state our truths. Dialoguing happens after, when you get permission to discuss a point that was brought up in the restorative circle. That part's really important to remember, is that we've created a safe space where people won't be attacked, they'll be heard, and that it just gets to stay there.
Now I understand that now that you put it into words, that does make sense. So yeah. I guess I revoke what I said. So yeah.
Well, at first, Patrick, you know, because you and I have similar backgrounds. Like at first, it kind of seems like a hokey pokey kind of like, you know, new age kind of incense burning kind of thing. You're like, I don't know that.
It is. No, stop it.
But at the end of the day, especially in this setting, it's important because really if you really want to get to the nth degree, we're doing two things. We're building leadership skills. That's the first thing. But the more important thing we're doing is we're creating a safe place for these students. We don't know who has experienced a sexual assault coming into this. We don't know who has been mistreated in some other form coming into this. And so by doing the restorative, just the connecting circle, the students identify who they feel safe with. And that's who they go to. So I don't know if you noticed this, but like both the prosecution and the defense went to Nadia when they had an issue. Why is that? Well, it's because something happened during the restorative piece when they identified her as a safe place to go. For whatever reason, I don't know what it is, and you know, you could probably study it for the next year and not know. And it wasn't just her. I mean, there were students that came to me. There were students that came to y'all. Like each one of you, like they reached out in different ways. Okay, that's what that restorative piece is. And once they get there, then we can have a real conversation. if you think you're going to walk up to somebody on the street and you don't have any kind of established relationship with, and you're going to have a conversation about how y'all are different, you're wasting time. Right.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
Like if somebody comes up to me, like if one of you guys call me up and say, hey, I just can't disagree with you more. I think you're an idiot. And I think this what you did was a stupid thing. I'm listening. If it's one of you guys, but if it's somebody I never met before, I'm like, well, thanks for calling. Click.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I think that's what, I mean, at least in the circles that I were at, I guess, nobody really reached out to me, which I'm not like butthurt about it, but I think that people saw that I had a different view on things. Like
no, I don't agree with that, Patrick. I think if they showed up at the after party, they reached out to you.
Oh, I guess you're right. Well, dang.
Mm-hmm.
I guess so. No, I feel proud
You got some of your bonding. We're working on fixing it for December, man. We're getting there.
Yeah, I mean, they look, they didn't come there if they didn't trust you.
No, that is correct. And they certainly didn't come back.
Yeah.
They didn't stay and didn't come back.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the whole piece is like, look, I mean, you can't live in the world and be in agreement with everybody about everything. I mean, that's just that's so freaking illogical. Like, I don't want to be around everybody that I agree about everything. Like, I want people in my life that can say, hey, hold up, pump the brakes. Have you really thought about what you just said? Because, I just tell you at my age, now look, there's some things that I'm pretty hardcore about. But there are things where people come up to me and say, why do you think that way? And I'm like, I don't know. I just have always thought that way. My people thought that way. Their people before them thought that way. Now, sometimes I think it through and I say, well, that's how I'm going to think. But then other times I think it through and I say, well, maybe we got it wrong.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, I wasn't really I wasn't rejecting the idea, but I didn't go into it with an open mind about the restorative circles. But whenever I did, and I actually engaged, I thought that it was a pretty cool thing. So now going forward, I'll be more open to newer ideas.
See, that was an interesting thing with me with the restorative circles is you mentioned how for you it went, you started off uninterested and then you became interested. I started off interested, they kept going. I just was like, I don't care anymore. Because I can now predict your own answers to an extent where I'm content, where I understand what you're about to say. And any time where I don't, I can tune in, but that's going to happen maybe once or twice. So I can just not actively, just passively tune out everybody else. And then once we got into the smaller circles where I both had to respond more and was hearing fewer and fewer opinions, I could actually hear the opinions. I thought about the opinions. And yeah, I hate rhetorical circles. They suck to me. I need this discussion because without the discussion, I don't really get to understand you because it's just so much slower when I just hear about you because that's boring. But the smaller, I can pay attention. The large ones, I'm like, you're interesting. Boring, 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 boring. Got you. Boring, 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 boring. That's the only way that I can process through them.
I wish we could get to the place where we could have more of that discussion. I really do. It's a challenge because, especially in the culture we live in, because what will happen really fast is as soon as you find somebody that disagrees with you, they will respond by trying to hurt you. And we have to be careful about that. And as much as I enjoy doing it, not hurting people, but I do enjoy the. Nothing makes me happier than a knockdown, drag out argument. It's wired in me.
So moving us forward, because somebody has to be right back in a second. That would be me. So what I hear about the restorative circles, Maya, if I was listening to you, Lauren, as well, is that we do want a couple of big ones, at least a couple. But the smaller ones are not a bad thing. But we should aim, if we have the number of students possible, we should have between 6 and 8 would be a good size. Okay, so about 6 to 8 is what we need to reflect back to Cynthia. Okay. Now, have I forgotten to summarize anything? Because my summaries have gotten, kind of spread out a little bit.
I have something. I'm gonna have an Annetta moment for a second and say, oh wait, should I just, can you see? Oh no, can you see the bear?
Kind of.
Hold on.
There you go.
This is the big bear. This goes to everybody, but especially Brandon and Annetta for all that y'all did for the camp.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I can't wait to go tell Donna Lee I got a big bear.
That's awesome. Thanks.
All right, guys. Are we ready for supper?
Yeah.
I don't get to eat. You all enjoy your supper.
Oh, and Brandon, and the best place to get a burger is